So our next speaker is Leeza Ahmady. Leeza is the program director of the Foundation for Spirituality and the Arts. And she is originally from Afghanistan, and she is an international art curator, and in particular, she's the director of the Asian Contemporary Arts Forum in New York City. So we're very happy to welcome her here to Charleston today. So Leeza, thank you so much. The floor is yours. Do you want to use this or want to use it?
My exposure to the arts began through the great tradition of storytelling. I grew up captivated by tales from the Quran about the great prophets, from Adam to Abraham to Joseph and Jonah or Yunus in the belly of the whale, to Moses, Jesus, and Muhammad. Sufi poems such as the great epic of Shahnama, the Book of Kings, were recited to us by my mother, herself a poet, descended from a line of poets. I listened to classical South Asian and classical Western music on the radio with my father, a lover of mathematics and an avid gardener. Language became image, and image became language, and I absorbed the lives of all the great lineage of the Abrahamic faith. They installed in me quiet lessons in ethics and elevated creativity and imagination as the ultimate individual and communal source for spiritual development and eternal salvation. I encountered theology at St. John's University, which also led to my bedazzlement with Renaissance art, beginning with Giotto's Madonna and Child, which was a painting I saw at the Uffizi. I felt the vibration, the spirit of Giotto alive, and said to myself, so this is how Giotto achieved immortality. And in that moment, it was clear to me that I wanted to work with artists. So I will skip over how the experience with Giotto and the Renaissance masters next led to my putting on exhibitions from inside of an infamous church turned nightclub in the late 1990s called The Limelight. And I can say that I learned a great deal about audience development and the art of collaboration. During my childhood, alongside stories, I absorbed daily debates about world politics between my parents, relatives, the neighbors, and so on. Our life revolved around communal living and ritual. The Afghan household is designed for living, sharing, sleeping, eating together. This was a kind of a being in the world that afforded me a great sense of the interconnectedness of everything, nature, the world, and the cosmos. Storytelling in the form of performative communal ritual sharing has become a framework through which I make exhibitions and art programs. The context of stories told, untold, or retold. By the way, what you were looking at is a form of keeping yourself warm in Afghanistan, and I discovered in my research that besides Afghanistan, this is practiced in Iran and Uzbekistan, and this is an installation that I created to kind of almost make up a living room that reminding of my childhood. Basically, this is how we would hang out with each other in the winter. And this is modern versions of this practice from Japan. You can see how perfect it is, right? And just the phenomena of how we're all connected. This is Namjoon Paik making this kind of work, and this is an artist in Uzbekistan in the 1970s, absolutely having no connection whatsoever with Namjoon Paik, making drawings of installations he dreamed about. So after becoming better acquainted with the art world, I could not ignore the lack of contemporary knowledge about the region, a region that was once the cradle of Islamic Renaissance. To be fair, we must account for the fact that half of the world was isolated from the other half for over 70 years by the bipolar world of the Cold War Soviet Union versus the West era. In response to the Western art world's obsession with what is at the center versus the periphery, the fallacy of the idea that what happened and happens in the West is the center, I have often had to refer to the Islamic Sufi view of the world in my curatorial work. It is a bit more humble, but also rather scientific. The Sufis see the universe as concentric circles radiating inward and outward, so that the periphery at some point becomes the center, and vice versa. I have often said that contemporaneity, much like modernity and creativity, does not belong to one race, place, or economy. Art in Central Asia has unfolded in parallel historical timelines as that of other regions in the world. The incredible critical acclaim that greeted the first Central Asian pavilion at the Venice Biennale, with artists from Afghanistan and the post-Soviet countries of Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, and Kyrgyzstan, have drawn an increasing amount of attention from the art world. Much of that attention have centered on the remarkably strong single and multi-channel video works produced in the region, which is often attributed to the region's centuries of performative, nomadic, shamanistic, and Sufi rituals, storytelling, street theater, and weaving traditions. Making unknown artists of Central Asia visible necessitated my need to explore Asia in its entirety as a massive continent through Asia Contemporary Art Week, a program that allowed me the great freedom to highlight artists from regions with centuries worth of linguistic, cultural, and ethnic roots, in addition to many overlapping religious and spiritual ties. I'm just going through some of my very communal, ritual-based exhibitions that I've put together over the years through Asia Contemporary Art Week. Unfortunately, we don't have time to go over each one of them, the details, but I hope that the spectacle of it can give you a sense of what was going on and also contextualize what Tyler was speaking about. The desire for expressing spiritual meaning in my own work, while recognizing that there was such a lack and hunger in the work of others, revealed an answer gradually through numerous studio visits with artists in various corners of the world. The studio visit, beyond a gateway to an artist's work, became a window to an artist's soul. I also began to perceive the studio visit as a sacred exhibition space in its own right, a space for exchange between the artist and an art professional or the visitor, regardless of the setting in question. As you can see, these settings were various. It's not a perfect space where we imagine an artist just dreaming up and living with paint and making work. A studio today could be anything, any space. A space for renewal and devotion for what is perhaps most precious, hidden, and uncommunicable. A space for creative exchange and incubation, and a space for encountering the artist's true spirit, their purpose, and ultimately their connection and relationship to the divine. Eventually, I began sharing the essence of these private studio visits through a curated annual art forum for artists and art professionals, which I called Field Meeting. Braving through many lengthy coaching sessions with the invited artists and arts professionals, I was eager to help them shine a light on, and in many cases, give flame to their hidden, often neglected spiritual aspirations. This often resulted in profoundly fulfilling and uplifting exchanges between the artists, me, and the participants alike. Beyond exhibition making, my curatorial work, especially with Asia Contemporary Art Week platform, has focused on highlighting the journey and supporting the profound process that they engage in. Unfortunately, we don't have time to go over each one of them, the details. So I'm thrilled to delve deep into the exploration of the connections between artistic practice and spiritual community faith, and conscious living through programs that empower the spirit of artists to expand their being and the life force within the communities they traverse. So these set of images that I'm sharing with you, just images of artworks that I'm currently exploring, I'm just researching. I have not, for most cases, worked with any of these artists, but it's so exciting to find them and to think about their practice and imagine how to work with them. I will speak about this, a couple. The piece is called Mouth to Mouth. They've encapsulated the entire text of Leviticus, one of the 5 books of the Torah, into pills, each one containing a small fragment of the text to suggest the idea that people ingest the same knowledge and rules, but interpret them differently. I'm really excited about this artist, Meg Hitchcock, that I just discovered. She has many works under the umbrella Illuminating Manuscripts. She fell in love with sacred text in her early 30s, and she read every holy book she could get her hands on, from the Bhagavad Gita to the Quran to the numerous sutras of Buddhism. The varieties of religious expressions that, and this is a quote, are based in their cultural differences, but spirituality is a shared experience of the heart. When I started using sacred texts in my drawings, it made sense to cross-pollinate them, so that the letters cut from one book formed the writings of another. In the process of deconstructing and reconstructing sacred texts, I found a way to express my deep reverence for the Word of God, which is, after all, the utterance of humankind. A few other artists that I'm exploring, and again, for the sake of time, I'm not going to go into them, just giving you a little taste of what the Foundation for Spirituality and the Arts is up to. The more I moved away from focusing on outcomes, I found my process helped clarify what was truly lacking in the art world that I had been entangled with for 2 decades. The door for a middle ground space where contemporary artists can freely express their deepest spiritual sentiments without hesitation, fear, and criticism, or risk of institutional banishment is astonishingly wide open. The ground that the Foundation for Spirituality and the Arts was established to nurture requires a great deal of creative, out-of-the-box collaboration between a variety of communities. How can building connections to spirituality, enrich artistic projects, help academic institutions serve students and faculty communities better? How can art history departments acknowledge the responsibility to practice inclusivity with regards to advancing the pursuit of artists whose work revolve around faith? Thank you.